James had been gone for 2 years. His deployment had been long and grueling, but the mission took an unexpected turn when his unit was ambushed during a reconnaissance operation. The chaos separated him from his team, and he was presumed dead when no trace of him could be found. Official notices were sent to families, including a heart-wrenching letter to his wife, Emma. Emma had been devastated. The love of her life, the man she had vowed to grow old with, was gone. For months, she grieved, refusing to believe he was truly lost. But as the months turned into a year, and then into 2, the void in her heart grew unbearable. She sought solace in her memories, but loneliness crept in like an unwelcome shadow. Enter David, James's childhood best friend. He had been a constant figure in Emma's life during James's absence. At first, his visits were to offer comfort, to remind her that she wasn't alone in her grief. But as time passed, the line between friendship and something deeper blurred. David, who had loved Emma from afar even before she married James, found himself drawn to her vulnerability. And Emma, desperate for companionship, let herself lean on him. Their bond grew stronger, and eventually Emma allowed herself to believe that she could find love again. It wasn't an easy decision. Her heart still ached for James. But David was kind, understanding, and unwavering in his support. Against the backdrop of shared loss and tentative hope, they married in a quiet ceremony attended only by close friends and family. James, however, was not dead. He had survived the ambush, though barely. Captured by enemy forces, he endured months of captivity before seizing an opportunity to escape. The journey back home was fraught with challenges, but the thought of reuniting with Emma kept him going. When he finally arrived in his hometown, he was gaunt, scarred, and unrecognizable to some. But he was alive, and his heart swelled with the anticipation of seeing Emma again. His excitement turned to confusion when he reached the front door of their home and saw David's car in the driveway. His key no longer fit the lock, and when he knocked, it was Emma who answered. For a moment, she stared at him as though he were a ghost. "James?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled, tears welling in his eyes. "It's me, Em. I made it back." Her face was a canvas of emotions, shock, disbelief, and something he couldn't quite place. Before she could speak, David appeared in the doorway. "Emma, who is it?" David froze when his eyes landed on James. The pieces fell into place for James in an instant. The way David stood close to Emma, the subtle possessiveness in his posture. His smile faltered. "What's going on?" James asked, his voice low and strained. Emma took a shaky breath, tears spilling over her cheeks. "James, I thought you were gone. We all did." David stepped forward, his face pale. "James, we never wanted this to happen. But things changed." The words hit James like a physical blow. He staggered back, his world crumbling. The love he had clung to during his darkest days had been replaced, his home no longer his own. Emma reached out to him, her voice pleading. "James, please understand. I never stopped loving you, but I was lost. James raised a hand, stopping her. His heart was shattered, but he could see the truth in her eyes and in the way she clung to David. Turning away, he whispered, "I understand." He walked away from the house, the life he had fought to return to now a memory. Emma watched him go, her heart breaking anew. She had made choices she never thought she'd have to, and now she was left with the weight of them. James disappeared down the street, unsure of where to go or what to do next. He had survived hell, but nothing had prepared him for this. James found himself wandering aimlessly through the quiet streets of his old town, each familiar landmark now alien, as if it no longer belonged to him. The memories of what he had fought for clashed painfully with the reality he had returned to. He eventually stopped at a park, sinking onto a weathered bench. The stillness of the night pressed on him, a cruel contrast to the storm inside. The following days were a blur. Word spread quickly that James was alive. Former friends and neighbors approached him with cautious joy, unsure of how to navigate the tragedy of his return. He stayed at a motel, unable to bear the thought of imposing on anyone, especially Emma. David tried to reach out, but James avoided him. It wasn't anger that fueled the distance, at least not entirely, but a deep sense of betrayal mixed with resignation. Emma, too, attempted to speak with him. She showed up at the motel one evening, her face pale and drawn. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said, standing in the doorway of a small room. "I thought I'd lost you forever, James. I wasn't trying to replace you. I was trying to survive." James leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "You don't owe me an explanation, Emma. You mourned and you moved on. I can't blame you for that." His voice cracked despite his best efforts to sound calm. "But it doesn't make this any easier." "I know," she whispered. "I still love you, James. I always will. Do you love him?" The question was out before he could stop it, his voice barely audible. Her silence was answer enough. She hesitated, then nodded, tears spilling down her face. "I do. But that doesn't mean what I felt for you has changed." James closed his eyes, the ache in his chest unbearable. "Then there's nothing left to say." Emma reached out as if to touch his arm, but stopped herself. "I'm so sorry, James, for everything." She turned and left, leaving James alone once more. In the weeks that followed, James tried to rebuild his life. He sought counseling through the local veterans center and reconnected with old friends who welcomed him back with open arms. Slowly, he began to find a new sense of purpose. He volunteered with a group that helped returning soldiers reintegrate into civilian life, finding solace in helping others navigate their own pain. Emma and David continued their lives together, but the shadow of James's return lingered. Emma often found herself thinking about him, wondering if he was healing, if he had found peace. David, too, struggled with guilt. He had always admired James, and though their friendship was fractured, he hoped that, in time, it might be mended. One day, months after his return, James received a letter. It was from Emma. "Dear James, I hope this finds you well. I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us, about what happened. I know there's no going back, but I need you to know how much you mean to me. You were my first love, my greatest love, that will never change. I hope one day you can forgive me, and maybe even forgive David. You deserve happiness, James, more than anyone I know. With love, always, Emma." James read the letter over and over, emotions swirling within him. He didn't know if he could ever fully forgive, but he realized he didn't want to carry the weight of resentment anymore. That evening, he sat at his desk and began to write his reply. "Dear Emma, thank you for your letter. It means more than I can express. I've been through hell and back, but I'm learning to live again. I'll always treasure what we had, and though it hurts to let go, I know it's the only way forward. I wish you and David continue next episode. Coming soon. Thanks for watching.